I think it started with the birthday cake. It was chocolate, 3 layers with those gold-dusted strawberries she never used to bother with. She baked it for our daughter's 6th birthday and the frosting was so perfect it looked store-bought. She even piped our daughter's name across the top in flawless cursive the way she never used to. For years, her cakes looked like lopsided volcanoes with sprinkles dumped by the handful. This one looked like something out of a cooking show. I remember staring at it, everyone singing, our kid clapping, and something about that perfect frosting made my stomach twist. Not because it was beautiful, but because it didn't feel like her. After the guests left and the house smelled like paper plates and juice boxes, I asked her, casually, where she learned to do all that. She shrugged and said, just YouTube, before heading upstairs with a slice for herself. That slice went untouched on her nightstand for 3 days. We hadn't been fighting. We hadn't been avoiding each other. In fact, everything on the surface looked good, eerily good. Too clean. Too precise. Like someone staging a house before selling it. A week later, I walked into the living room and found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by open travel brochures. She was planning a vacation, she said. Something big. Emily's old enough to remember it this time, she told me without looking up. We should do something that sticks. She said it like a pitch to a client. I remember watching her fold the corners of one of the brochures. Her nail polish chipped in that exact way I used to find charming, before it started looking like neglect. She started working from cafes again. I never thought anything of it. She said she got more editing done out of the house, fewer distractions. It made sense. She's a photographer, after all. What didn't make sense was the perfume. Expensive, sharp, new. Not her usual light citrus scent, but something heavier. I noticed it on her scarf one evening when she tossed it onto the couch, and the whole room shifted with it. It smelled like hotel elevators and designer handbags. I didn't ask. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe she was trying to feel more like herself again. God knows parenting can make you forget what kind of person you used to be. But it wasn't just the perfume. It was the laughter. I heard it through the bathroom door one night while brushing my teeth. Her phone was on speaker. That kind of laugh wasn't for me. It never had been. She hung up too quickly when she realized I was listening. I didn't press it. She said it was her cousin from Portland. The one with the loud boyfriend. She smiled when she said it. Practiced smile. That's when I realized something had shifted. Her lies weren't careless anymore. They were smooth, rehearsed, and still I didn't say a word. Then came the day I picked up her camera by mistake. We were leaving for a quick trip to her sister's. She forgot her backup battery and I thought I'd be helpful. I opened the wrong memory card. There were photos. A lot of them. But not of landscapes or clients or Emily. One was of a man I didn't know, his hand resting on her waist in a way I had never seen before. Confident. Territorial. Another showed her in the mirror, taking a selfie in a hotel bathroom. The same perfume bottle was in the corner of the frame. Her expression wasn't neutral. It was glowing. That was the moment I knew the cake had never been for Emily. It was a rehearsal. A test. Something she made to impress someone who appreciated effort. Someone new. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. Instead, I put the camera back exactly where I found it, turned off the lights, and lay in bed beside her as if nothing had happened. Because sometimes the only way to really see a person for who they are is to let them keep lying. And oh, she was just getting started. You ever have one of those moments where your body knows before your mind catches up? Like something heavy drops in your stomach and your skin just tightens? That was me lying beside Lindsay that night, her breathing soft, steady, the back of her neck inches from my face. I couldn't sleep. Not because I was heartbroken yet. No, it was worse than that. I felt like I'd just stepped off a cliff and was somehow still floating, waiting for the ground to smash up into me. The next few days, I played a role. Husband. Dad. Provider. I packed Emily's lunches, did the dishes, folded laundry, hell, I even brought Lindsay coffee in bed. She smiled at me like I was her hero. Kissed me on the cheek. Called me babe. She had no idea that I knew. That I'd seen the man's hand wrapped around her waist like she was his. So I started digging. Quietly. Her phone was always locked. But her laptop? Not so much. She'd never imagined I'd check it. That was her mistake. I waited until she was out, claimed she was doing a shoot for a newlywed couple at this cabin 2 towns over. She even showed me the online listing, all rustic wood and golden hour lighting. Told me she'd be back late. Don't wait up. Of course I didn't. Instead, I logged into her messages. Emails. Cloud storage. I went in knowing I might find something I couldn't unsee. I had no idea how far down the route went. There were emails, dozens of them. Some under fake names. One of them even had a burner Gmail titled lphotography_2. Real subtle. She'd been meeting up with them for months. There wasn't just one guy. There were 5. 5 different men. One of them was a married client. Another was someone I vaguely remembered meeting at a wedding Lindsay shot last fall. He shook my hand. She joked once that photographers see people at their happiest and horniest. I thought it was just her being crass. It wasn't a joke. The worst part? She talked about me. In emails. Called me boring but loyal. Said she felt trapped in a museum exhibit called Domestic Bliss. One email said, "He's a good dad, I guess. But I need to feel something again. I'm not dead. Not dead." That was her justification. She wasn't cheating because she hated me. She was cheating because she was bored. Because I wasn't enough of a thrill. I sat in that chair in the living room we built together with the couch we saved up for, and read how the woman I married reduced me to a safe backup plan. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I found the paternity test. An old email. Buried. Hidden in a folder labeled taxes. I opened the PDF. My hands were shaking. I didn't even know what I was looking at until I saw the name Emily at the top and then the words probability of paternity. 0%. I don't remember how long I sat there. Might have been minutes. Might have been hours. Everything in my head turned into static. A dull roar. I read it again and again, hoping the words would change. Hoping I was misreading it. I wasn't. The little girl I had rocked to sleep. The one whose first word was dada. The one I carried on my shoulders at the zoo. She wasn't mine. And Lindsay never told me. She never planned to. That was the moment my world ended. Not with a bang, but with a PDF. And outside, the sky was turning orange with sunset. Inside me, everything was turning black. She walked through the front door like nothing was wrong, like the world hadn't just collapsed behind her back. It was around 11 p.m. She was still in her work clothes. Tight jeans, a cropped flannel, boots with heels she never wore for real shoots. Her hair was a little too styled. Her makeup too fresh for someone who supposedly spent the last 8 hours photographing a rustic couple in the woods. And she smelled like hotel soap. She kicked off her boots and called out, "Hey babe, you still up?" I was sitting in the kitchen with her laptop open in front of me, the paternity results still on the screen, glowing like a portal to hell. She rounded the corner and froze. Just for a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but I caught it, that microsecond of panic before she plastered on a smile. "You're snooping through my stuff now," she said, half laughing, trying to play it off. I didn't say anything. I just turned the laptop so it faced her. She went pale. Then her face shifted, confusion first, then a flicker of fear, and finally that stone-cold defiance I hadn't seen since the early days of our relationship, back when she'd argue over absolutely everything just to feel powerful. "You went through my private emails?" she snapped, crossing her arms. That was her lead. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I can explain." Not even "it's not what it looks like." No, Lindsay decided to go full scorched earth. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She looked me dead in the face and said, "You shouldn't have looked. If you hadn't, we wouldn't be here." I think I laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds more like a cough or a scream that got lost halfway out of your chest. "You've been sleeping with 5 men," I said. "You've been lying to me for years." Emily, I couldn't finish the sentence. My throat just closed up. That's when she rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. "Don't get dramatic," she said. "You love that kid. What does it matter if she's not biologically yours? What does it matter?" I whispered. "You let me believe she was mine. You built her whole damn life on a lie." She sat down across from me, legs crossed, completely unbothered. You always wanted a picture-perfect family. I just gave it to you. What difference does DNA make if you were happy? That's when I lost it. I slammed my hand on the table, not to scare her, not to intimidate, but because I couldn't contain it anymore. The betrayal. The rage. The audacity. And still, she didn't flinch. She looked at me like I was the problem. You were so busy playing husband of the year, you never noticed I was drowning, she said, voice sharp now. I needed more. I needed to feel wanted. Alive. I stood up. Couldn't sit across from her anymore. Couldn't look at the woman who had once promised forever but had carved my back open with 1,000 quiet betrayals. You're a monster, I said. You're not just selfish. You're poison. She laughed again. Real soft. Then why'd you stay so long, Jake? Huh? If I'm such a bitch? I didn't answer. Because in that moment I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. The woman I married was gone. Maybe she never existed. I wasn't married to a person. I was married to a performance. And it was over. The next morning was silent. Not the peaceful kind. The kind of silence that feels like a scream echoing through your skull. She slept in our bed. Like nothing had happened. I took the couch. Couldn't breathe around her. Every time I heard her shift under the sheets, I saw flashes, her in that hotel mirror, that man's hand on her hip, that smug little smirk when she said, "What difference does DNA make?" Emily padded down the stairs around 7 a.m., rubbing her eyes and dragging her little stuffed sloth by the arm. She climbed into my lap like she always did, curled under the blanket, her hair messy, breath warm against my neck. And I broke. Not on the outside. I couldn't. But something deep inside me shattered in that moment. Because I held her like she was mine and I wanted so badly for it to still be true. She looked up at me and whispered, "Why are you sad, Daddy?" I almost choked. How do you tell a 6-year-old she's the only real thing in a life full of lies? So I kissed her forehead and said, "Just tired, sweetheart." She nodded. "Mommy says you worry too much." Oh, I bet she does. Lindsay didn't come downstairs until noon. She was dressed like she was going out. Tight black leggings, leather jacket, makeup done like she was headed to a photo shoot for Instagram. Not to face the crater she blew into our lives. I asked, without looking up from Emily's coloring book, "Where are you going?" She grabbed her keys off the counter. "Out. I need space." "From what?" "The truth." She didn't even respond. Just walked out. And for the first time it hit me. She had no shame. None. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't scared. She wasn't broken up over losing our marriage or what this would do to our daughter. She was relieved, like she'd finally taken off the mask. That's the part nobody tells you about. When you catch a cheater, you expect a breakdown, regret, maybe even desperation. What you don't expect is indifference. The cold, clinical detachment of someone who's already left you in every way but physically. Later that day, I went to see a lawyer. I didn't know what I wanted yet. Full custody, separation, a DNA test ordered by court, all of it maybe. But I needed to feel like I wasn't drowning anymore. The lawyer was calm, efficient. She said something I'll never forget. "If you want to move forward, you have to stop waiting for an apology. She's not sorry, and she never will be." I didn't cry that day. Not when I signed the papers to initiate proceedings. Not when I packed a bag and told Lindsay I was taking Emily to stay at my brother's for a while. Lindsay didn't fight it. She barely looked up from her phone. She just muttered, "Fine, do what you want." And that was it. Years of marriage, a child, a home, dreams, memories, all brushed off like lint from her shoulder. She didn't ask when we'd be back. She didn't hug Emily. She didn't look back. And I finally realized I wasn't the one being left. She was. And soon, she'd be completely alone. That we were at my brother's house by sunset. He lives in this modest 2-story place out in the suburbs, the kind of house where everything smells like grilled cheese and laundry detergent. Safe. Honest. Normal. His wife, Claire, didn't ask too many questions when I showed up with Emily and an overnight bag. She just looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You can stay as long as you need." Emily ran off with their kids like it was just another sleepover. Meanwhile, I sat on their couch gripping a mug of coffee I never drank, staring into it like it held answers. My brother, Mark, waited until we were alone before asking, "So, what happened?" I didn't plan to say it out loud. But the second I opened my mouth, it all poured out. Not just the cheating. Not just the 5 men. Not just the paternity test. But the years of pretending. Of pushing down little gut feelings. Of forgiving too easily. Of believing love meant always giving her the benefit of the doubt. Mark didn't interrupt. Didn't say "I told you so." Just sat there, fists clenched, jaw tight, like he wanted to drive to my house and do something reckless. When I finished, he said, "You're not going back there, right?" I didn't answer. Because the truth? I didn't know. I still felt tethered to her. To our daughter, my daughter, even if blood says otherwise. To the version of life I thought I was living. But something had shifted. I wasn't desperate to fix it anymore. I wasn't trying to make her see what she'd done. I was just exhausted. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat alone on the back porch scrolling through old photos on my phone. Birthday parties. Zoo trips. Christmas mornings. All those smiles, those perfect little moments. I realized something chilling. She'd been lying the entire time. There was one photo, Lindsay, holding Emily as a baby, both of them laughing. I zoomed in. Saw her necklace. That same one I found shoved in a drawer a few days ago, tangled with a pair of cufflinks I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine. And just like that, I remembered something else. A phone call. Months ago. I was in the garage fixing a shelf. Lindsay thought I was inside. I heard her voice from the laundry room, low and careful, saying, "No, I told you. He doesn't suspect anything. He thinks the kid is his." I remember brushing it off at the time. Thought she was talking to a friend about some random drama. But now I knew. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. She had built this entire life on lies, layer after layer, smiling while she buried me alive. The next morning I called her. She answered on the second ring, groggy and annoyed. "What now?" I took a deep breath. "You need to pack your things," I said. "You've got 72 hours. I'm filing for divorce. The house will be mine. You're going to need somewhere else to stay." Silence. Then that same venomous tone, "You think you can just take everything?" "No," I said, "calm now. I'm not taking anything. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made." And I hung up. She didn't call back. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. She showed up unannounced. 2 days after I told her to pack and leave, there she was, standing on my brother's front porch like a scene from a bad soap opera. Tight jeans. Sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. Lips pursed into the condescending pout she wore every time she didn't get her way. Claire opened the door. I heard the tension in her voice. "Lindsay, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to talk to my husband." Her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Not you." Claire didn't move. "Jake doesn't want to see you." That's when I stepped into view. She took off the sunglasses slowly, like she was revealing a weapon. "You're really going through with this?" "I gave you 3 days," I said, "and a lifetime of chances." She scoffed, like she couldn't believe I had the audacity to stand up to her. "This is your fault, Jake. You made me feel like I didn't matter." There it was again. The delusion. The rewriting of history. The inability to take even a grain of responsibility. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me so the kids wouldn't hear, and said, "You cheated on me with 5 different men. You lied about our daughter's paternity. And you mocked me behind my back. Don't come here acting like the victim." She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "Fine. Be dramatic. But you can't just erase me from your life. I have rights too." I stared at her for a long second, then pulled out my phone and opened the screen where I had saved the lawyer's message. "She said you might say that," I said. "But you're wrong. You have no legal claim to the house. You abandoned the marriage." And as for Emily, my voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. "You've got 2 options. Walk away quietly. Or I fight you with everything I've got." And for the first time I saw it. Fear. Just a flicker. But it was there. Because she never expected me to become this version of myself, the one who stops tolerating, stops forgiving, stops playing the fool. She stepped back, smirked like it didn't matter, but her voice betrayed her. "You think you're so righteous now? You think people are gonna feel sorry for you?" "I don't need their pity," I said. "I've got the truth. And it's louder than your lies." She stood there for a moment longer, like she was waiting for a miracle. Or maybe for me to crack. But I didn't. I just turned around and walked back inside. She banged on the door once. Then again. And then she was gone. I stood in the hallway staring at the wood grain, hands shaking. Claire came over, didn't say a word, just wrapped me in a hug. And I let myself cry for real this time. Not because I missed her. Not because I wanted her back. But because I had finally accepted something terrifying and liberating all at once. The woman I loved never existed. And the one who did, she was the last bitch standing. But not for long. You ever watch a liar unravel? It doesn't happen all at once. It's not some big movie climax where they suddenly scream and confess and fall apart on the floor. No, it's slower, dirtier, like watching a fancy dress rot from the inside out. That's what happened next. After our little porch showdown, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd slink off into the shadows like every cartoon villain who loses their audience. But no, Lindsay wasn't done. Not even close. The first shot came through a mutual friend, Jenna. Sweet, naive Jenna, who texted me saying, "Hey, I heard what Lindsay said happened. Are you okay?" My stomach dropped. I asked, "What exactly did she say?" Turns out, Lindsay was on a full-blown PR campaign. She told everyone I was controlling, emotionally abusive, and had pushed her into the arms of other men by treating her like a maid instead of a wife. Oh, and the best part? She claimed Emily wasn't mine because I refused to try for a baby for months. So she had to take matters into her own hands. Let that sink in. She didn't just cheat. She didn't just lie. She tried to spin the narrative like she was some battered soul who had no choice but to betray me. And people were buying it. Suddenly, friends we'd known for years were going quiet. A couple even unfollowed me on socials. I saw a post from one of them. There are always two sides to every story, and I swear I nearly threw my phone through a wall, but I didn't respond. Not yet, because I knew what was coming. You see, Lindsay forgot one thing. She left a trail. Emails, photos, texts, DMs, receipts, that burner email account, the paternity results. Hell, one of the guys she slept with was married, and his wife reached out to me. That's when it all flipped. Her name was Carly. She messaged me on Facebook at 2 a.m., said she found my info while going through her husband's old phone backups. She was kind, devastated. Said Lindsay had promised her husband it was just fun and no strings. And when Carly found out, Lindsay mocked her in a message, called her fragile, said, "You should thank me. I reminded your man what a real woman feels like." I sent Carly the emails, the pictures, the messages, the timelines, everything. She cried. I listened. Then she said 6 words that lit something in my chest. "Let's burn this bitch to the ground." And that's when it started. Carly and I pulled together everything. Every piece of proof. Every screenshot. She contacted a lawyer. Contacted mine. I sent a full report to everyone Lindsay had lied to. Every mutual friend. Every wedding client she still used for credibility. No rage. No dramatics. Just cold, hard truth. And oh, it hit her fast. Within days, she lost 3 gigs. One of the men she'd been seeing ghosted her after his wife found out. Her family, her own mother, called me in tears, saying she didn't recognize her daughter anymore. But here's the thing. I didn't do it to ruin her. I did it to reclaim myself. To clear the smoke she'd spent years pumping into our lives. And when Lindsay called me, screaming, crying, spitting venom through the speaker, all I said was, "You started the fire. I just stopped putting it out." She tried to play victim. Again. A few days after the fallout started, Lindsay sent me a text at 3:11 a.m. It said, "Can we just talk? Everything's ruined. You didn't have to go this far." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, a million words surging up from somewhere deep, somewhere raw. But I didn't answer. Not yet. By the time morning came, she'd left 5 more messages. "You've turned everyone against me. Even my mom won't return my calls. You're not as innocent as you act. I miss our family. Emily needs both her parents." That last one, that was her tactic. Every time things slipped from her hands, She tried to reach for Emily like some kind of emotional life raft. Like the daughter she lied about, used, and betrayed was suddenly her golden ticket back into relevance. But I wasn't falling for it. Instead, I set up a meeting with her and both our lawyers present. Neutral ground. A stiff office with fake plants and chairs that squeaked every time someone shifted. She walked in looking like a shadow of herself. Hair tied back messily, dark circles under her eyes. That fake confidence she wore like lipstick now cracked at the edges. She didn't look at me, didn't say hello, just sat down, crossed her legs, and waited. My lawyer laid it all out. Divorce terms. House goes to me. I retain custody of Emily, with Lindsay getting supervised visitation pending paternity discussion and court approval. I expected fireworks, denials, screaming. Instead, she laughed. A bitter, broken sound. You think she's going to want to stay with a man who isn't even her real father, she said, eyes flashing. And that's when something inside me snapped, not in anger, not in grief, but in clarity. I looked at her, dead calm, and said, she already chose. The night you didn't say goodbye. The morning she asked where you were and didn't even cry when I said you weren't coming. That landed. I saw it. A flinch. Barely there. But real. Then she looked down. Her voice dropped. You don't know what it's like to be invisible. To be everything to a family and nothing to yourself. You don't know what it's like, I said, to be lied to by the person you trusted most while raising a child you thought was yours while carrying the weight of someone else's sins. She didn't reply. Because deep down, she knew she wasn't invisible. She was just seen for what she really was and couldn't handle the reflection. The meeting ended without incident. No tears. No rage. Just the final crumbling of the story she tried so hard to sell. And as I walked out of that office, something strange happened. I felt nothing for her. Not love. Not hate. Just silence. The kind that comes after a long, bitter storm. They say karma's slow. That it creeps. Waits. Takes its time. Not this time. For Lindsay, karma came like a damn avalanche. And she didn't see it coming until it buried her. It started with her career. Word travels fast in our town, especially in creative circles. The wedding gigs dried up first. One client canceled mid-contract when she found out Lindsay had been involved with her fiancé's best friend. Another couple posted publicly that their photographer had inappropriate ties to married men and advised others to stay away. Then came the worst hit. A boutique magazine she'd been pitching to for months completely blacklisted her. Said she was not a brand fit. She called them, begged, cried. I heard about it through someone on the inside. Said she kept whispering, they're all turning against me. Like she couldn't understand how her lies had consequences now. No work, no money, and then no apartment. She tried to rent one after I filed for exclusive occupancy of the house. But with no steady income and a reputation in flames, nobody wanted to co-sign for her. Not even her own parents. Yeah. Her mom blocked her number. Apparently, after I sent them the paternity results and exposed how long Lindsay had been lying, they were done. Her dad called me quietly and said, we're ashamed. We didn't raise her for this. She had nowhere to go. I found out from Mark, my brother, that she was couch hopping between friends who still tolerated her out of guilt or pity. That she'd shown up drunk to one place, sobbing on the porch, begging to just stay for a few days. Nobody wanted the mess. And suddenly, she was the outsider. She was the one abandoned. She was the one people whispered about at brunch. Meanwhile, Emily and I, we were okay. Better than okay. She started therapy. Small, gentle sessions where she talked about the loud house and mommy always being gone. And slowly, I saw her bloom. Brighter, calmer, laughing again. One night, we were watching cartoons, and she curled into my side and said, I like it better when it's just us. That sentence wrecked me. Not because it was sad, but because it was honest. Because my daughter, even without my DNA, knew who was real, who stayed, who loved without lies. And Lindsay, she started calling again. Voicemails. Rambling, desperate ones. One of them, I'll never forget it. was just her sobbing and repeating, "Please, Jake, please. I don't know who I am anymore. That was the one I saved. Not out of sympathy, but as proof. Proof that when you treat love like a game, cheat your way through life, and spit on the people who would have died for you, eventually you lose everything. So this is it. The end of the story. Or at least the end of hers and mine. The divorce went through 3 weeks ago. Clean and brutal. I got the house. Full custody of Emily because guess what? The judge didn't care about biology. He cared about who showed up. Who tucked her in. Who kissed her scraped knees. Who stayed. Lindsay didn't contest it. She didn't have the money, the stability, or even the fight left in her. She moved 2 towns over. Rumors say she's crashing with some older guy she used to know from high school. One of her old flames. It's poetic in a trashy way. Full circle, but in reverse. The last time I saw her was during the custody handoff. She looked empty. Her hair was unwashed. Nails chipped. Jacket too big. Like she'd borrowed someone else's skin but couldn't zip it up right. She tried to smile when she saw Emily. Tried to pretend. But our daughter clung to my leg and said, "Can we go now, Daddy?" without even looking up at her. That moment? That was the real funeral. Not for our marriage. Not even for the lie of our family. But for the illusion that this woman had ever been capable of love that wasn't conditional, selfish, or fake. I walked away that day and never looked back. And now? Now I sleep again. I laugh again. I stopped checking her socials. Stopped wondering what if. Because I already lived it. And it nearly killed me. So here's what I'll leave you with. If you're reading this, thinking maybe your gut is wrong, that you're just paranoid, or that the person you love wouldn't really do this to you, listen to that voice. Not the one in your heart. The one in your stomach. The one that twists when the truth tries to claw its way out of the lies they fed you. Don't wait for the perfect evidence. Don't wait to be loved the right way. If you're begging someone to choose you, they already haven't. And if you ever find yourself holding a child that isn't yours, loving them harder than the one who made them ever did, know this, you are not the fool. You are the hero of a story they weren't brave enough to write. As for Lindsay, she's alone now. Exactly the way she left me. But I didn't stay broken. I rebuilt. Stronger. Sharper. Wiser. And I'll never mistake chaos for passion again. Reddit, thanks for reading. I'm finally free.